Welcome everyone to this class. Today we're going to learn how to create this tire that you are seeing now on screen in Blender. This will be a step-by-step tutorial and you can follow along even if it's your first day in Blender. Also, at all times, you will see on screen the keys that I'm using so that you don't get lost. This is a high poly tire and we will start it by just using a simple plane, and we will edit this plane, give it a shape, then apply some modifiers, and at the end we will achieve a very nice looking wheel. We will learn a lot of useful techniques to achieve realistic looking tires, and you can use this tire in any of your projects for your cars, trucks, robots, or anything else that includes a tire. We will also add some simple rims and materials so that you get to see how to customize this tire for your projects. So without wasting any more time, let's dive into it. So here we are in this new project and we're going to start by deleting everything. So we're going to press the letter A to select everything and press delete. And now we have nothing here on the scene, but we will create a plane. So to create a plane, Shift A, Mesh, and we add a plane. And with this plane, what we're going to do is that we're going to edit it, but first we will add a mirror modifier so that the tire will be symmetric, and this will save us a lot of work. So to add the mirror, we will leave the plane here as it is, and we're going to go to top B by pressing number 7 on the numpad. And we're going to go to edit mode by pressing tab, and we will add a loop here to cut the plane in half. We can do this by pressing Ctrl R, and this will place a loop. We can press right click so that it goes in the center, and now we have the plane split in half. What we want to do is delete half of it, so I'm going to delete this left side, for instance. I'm going to select this face with the number 3 selected so that we can select the face, and we're going to press delete in faces. Now we just have half of the plane here, and we will directly add the mirror modifier. So to add the mirror modifier, we go into object mode, we go here to the modifiers tab, we click add modifier, we can type mirror, and by default it mirrors along the x-axis, which is exactly what we need. So now we have everything set up. If you cut the plane along this axis here, you would need to mirror along the y-axis, so you will need to change this. But what we want to make sure is to enable clipping here, and we can leave merge on here because we will need it probably later, and you can leave the merge on here, it can be useful. So what we will do now is to start modeling the tire. So if you're asking how will we make the tire out of the plane, well, there is an interesting concept that we can use here, and it's a good technique to edit something like a tire which is symmetric and it has a repeating pattern. So let me just draw it here so that you can get an idea. And I'm going to just try to make an example here. So imagine that this is our tire seen from the side, and this is the center of the tire, like this. What we're going to do is that we're going to edit just a section of this tire. Let's say some part here. And I'm going to change color here. And as you can see, what we want to do is create something like this. So what we want to do is that we want to actually edit only this part of the tire that's within these two lines. I'm going to change again the color so that you fully get the idea. So this red part of the tire is the one that we want to actually model. And then we will use some modifiers to duplicate it and bend it so that it goes around 360 degrees. And then we would just be pasting this thing that we have created along the tire, and by using maybe 20 or 30 or 40 of these segments, we'll fully create the tire and it will snap perfectly so that it looks seamless and perfect. So now I hope that it's a little bit more clear, and basically what we are doing all of the time is model this red section, which is a part of the tire, and don't worry if it's flat because we will bend it accordingly. Even though if it's a very small segment, let's say that this angle here is small, it means that this will almost be flat, but not entirely flat. Anyways, I'm going to erase this. And you can delete the annotations by holding down Ctrl and clicking. So now that it's a little bit more clear, let's go back to the object. And I'm going to go to edge mode by pressing number 2. And I'm going to select this edge and we're going to extrude it. So E, then X. Something like that. And what I will do is that I will add here two loops. So Ctrl R, scroll the wheel up, and let's place it here in the center by clicking right click. And what I will do is that I will just move this one a little bit to the left. So double tapping G, G and G again. Now we can slide it somewhere here close, and this will be the center of the wheel, the part that will divide it into. And here I will add another loop here, and we can now play a little bit with the loops. And here there is something very important that you need to consider, and it is that when we are modeling this tire, we want the profile from the bottom to follow the shape of the profile on the top, or the other way around. Why do I say this? Because let's say that if I select this loop and I press G then Y, we can create this pattern here. So now if I go back to object mode, we have created this. So if you remember from what I drew before, we will basically duplicate and paste this section of the wheel a lot of times. So if you press Shift D and duplicate it and move it along the Y axis, you can see that we have this part of the tire and we want it to perfectly snap here. So as you can see now, it perfectly snaps. And this happens because we have moved both the top and the bottom together. And that's because we have pressed G and Y while having both vertices from the top and bottom selected. If, for instance, now I go to the vertex mode by pressing 1 and I press G, then Y with this vertex, and because I have moved this up, this upper profile doesn't snap or doesn't fit nicely with this one. So if I go to object mode and press Shift D and move it along the Y axis, you can see that it doesn't snap. There's no way that you can snap it, and even if you placed it on top, it doesn't snap either. And here we have a problem. So that's very important. Whenever we make adjustments here, we want to make it in both sides. So if we move this towards the top, so G, then Y like this, or like this, we want to always select both of them. Otherwise, they will not fit like this, they will fit perfectly. And this is very important, so always keep it in mind and never make adjustments to only one of the sides like this, because then you lose the proportions and it doesn't snap anymore. So always consider that. I'm going to press Ctrl Z until here, and I'm going to show you one trick before continuing, and it's especially very useful in cases like this now, where we are quite sensible to making any mistake, and then if we realize this a little bit later, we need to go back to fix. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to go to Preferences, and what we're going to do is that we're going to go to System, and we're going to increase here the undo steps. This is very useful because by default the number is quite low, and this, by increasing it a lot, I have 150, but you can add much more. This will make it possible that after editing a lot, if we realize a mistake, we can go back 150 times by pressing Ctrl Z. And this is very nice because we can just fix a mistake that we have committed a long time ago. So increase this quite a bit, and we will be probably using it a lot, because otherwise if it's like at 30 or something, sometimes you realize a mistake and you cannot just go back. You will press Ctrl Z, but there will be a point where you cannot go back anymore, and it's very annoying. So this is very convenient here, and now we can start. Since we want the wheel to be quite realistic, we will need to add more edges to make the shape smoother. So we're going to start by just moving this down, so G then Y. And what we want is that we want these edges, these transitions, to be a little bit smoother. Right now it's very sharp, and also here, this is a very sharp turn here. So we can just add some bevel. To do this, we can just select this edge and press Ctrl B, and we can turn the wheel to add more edges. But for now, I'm just going to do one here, because we don't want to add so many. Otherwise, we will have faces that are very small, and it will be trickier later to cast the shadows and to get the bevels right. So see that if I press the Ctrl B here, it's good if we want one or two, but if we add a lot like this, we have these faces that they are very small, and then this can cause problems if we want to bevel, because the faces and edges will overlap, and this will be very hard to fix later. So we're going to try to keep it as low as possible while still making it look good. So here maybe I will add just two like this, and you can see that we have a quite harmonious shape, which looks very nice. Now what we can do here is that we will extrude this again along the x-axis, and what I will do is that I will move this a little bit closer here, and maybe this one as well a little bit closer, and I'm going to select this entire face by holding number 3 and G along the y-axis, and I'm going to move it down like this. So we are creating this interesting shape. Here I will add small bevel, something like that. And I'm going to select this edge here, and I'm going to move it a little bit along the x-axis, so G then X. And what I will do now is that I will change the view. I will go down like this, or press number 1, make sure that this edge is selected, number 1, and I'm going to press G, then Z, like this, so that we're going to start creating the side of the tire. I'm going to press E, then Z to extrude on the Z axis, and you can see we have this. I'm going to press E again, and what I'm going to do here is first select this edge and add a bevel here, maybe even 3 times here, 1 again. I'm going to select this edge here on the bottom. We're going to make it relatively straight, like this, maybe add some sort of curve here, and now we're going to start closing it. So something like this, and we're going to finish it here. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to add a bevel, I would say in these 3 parts here, maybe not here at the end. I will add bevel here for these 2, just small, something like this. And I think that I will add small one here, so clicking it, Ctrl V, something like that. And I think I will move this one here a little bit down, so G and Z, just something like that. If you hold down Shift, remember that you can make these subtle movements. G while holding down Shift is much more convenient, so like this. And as you can see, this starts to look a little bit like the rubber part of the wheel, and then the rim of the wheel would be down here. By the rubber part, I mean the part of the wheel that's not the rims. So if you make the wheel, this would be the rim of the wheel, something like that. And all of this is made out of rubber, which is what we are designing, not the center. This would be made out of metal, and we will do it later, just to clarify. And now we can continue. What you want to make sure though is that the proportions are right. This is very important. So you have to kind of imagine the size of the wheel. So this wouldn't make sense if I just go and press S and Z. This wouldn't really make sense because, yeah, looking from the top it can be right, but there's no way that the tire depends on the purpose, but usually the tires are much thicker on the sides, so you kind of want to have this right. And something like this I feel looks quite proportional. So now we have kind of the general shape. What we want to do now is to add some extra details, and these details will be like relief, or let's say stuff that comes out of the wheel, let's say like topography kind of. We will extrude several faces up so that they are like the things that the wheels have. They are not entirely flat. They have certain patterns that they make the wheel have more grip, and this is what we want to do. So let's go back to top view. So here in top view, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select this edge here on the bottom, all of it. You can see all of the edge, and I'm going to extrude it. So E along the y-axis, something like this. And this will create some separation between the extruded parts, which will be those faces, and the non-extruded parts. We will not extrude anything from this edge. Otherwise, if we were to extrude and not leave a gap, then it wouldn't look like we have extruded. We would just make the tire higher, but we want to leave some gaps. You will see exactly what I mean with this thing that we have left here, these extra faces extruded later when we start applying the array modifiers. So I'm going to select these 2 faces, and I'm going to extrude them upwards. So E then Z, E, Z, something like that. But what we can do is that we can select all the faces that we want to extrude. Let's say these 2 as well, and maybe this, something like that, even this one. And we will extrude them along the Z axis, so E and Z, something like that. We can always change this stuff, but for now I think it looks good. So here on this side, if we go back to front view, this might not look proper now, but don't worry, this is how it should be. But maybe you want to actually make this edge follow a little bit more the round shape. So we want to just move a little bit this edge here, going to 1, front view, and pressing G along this x-axis. We can kind of follow the curvature, G and Z a little bit, like that, looks a little bit better. And now we have this shape. It starts looking good, but it's a little bit hard right now to see the geometry. You can see that if I'm looking at it like this, it's hard to see when the edges change like this. Here you cannot really tell that there's a gap here, especially when looking at here. And if you go to 7, it just looks flat, and this is not really convenient here because we really want to see what we are doing when extruding. So we can go here and we can enable cavity, and we will enable also depth of field. We can choose the type to both, and you can see that now it's much more clear when we have these edges and these extrusions. So here we can continue adding some details. So I will go to top view, and remembering that we always need to edit on both sides. So whenever we move the top edge, the bottom edge has to follow, or the other way around. So maybe I'm going to press G and Y here, and I will add something like this, and I will add a bevel here, maybe even 2. And what I want to do now here as well is to add some bevel to make it look a little bit smoother, and we will not have these very sharp 90-degree edges here. So to do this, we want to bevel these top faces, but we don't want to bevel this in the middle, because if we press bevel now, you can see that we are also beveling here in the middle, and this adds nothing but extra geometry, and it will create some issues, because if I even increase it more, the bevel, you can see that now we have weird things and artifacts happening. This is not what we want, so we only want to bevel the surrounding faces and not the faces that are inside, so only this, for instance. And we can do the same here by holding down Shift, like this. We'll select the top faces. Here we can just click Shift and hold down Control and Shift and kind of go around like this. But here we can just press Shift. If we hold down Control and Shift, it will just create the shortest path between one edge and the other, between the last edge and the one that we are selecting. And it can be convenient, but here it's a little bit tricky sometimes because there are more edges that go around. So if we select this edge here and we want to go here, it will take this edge here as the shortest path. But if we select here on the side and then this edge here on the bottom, the shortest path from this edge to this edge are the edges here on the side, which makes it very convenient because it will select all of these lines that we're trying to select. So now what we're going to do is press Ctrl V and add slight bevel, not too much, something like this. If we go to front view, this is a good amount, I would say. And now I will make some last adjustments. First, I would want these things that stick out to be a little bit more square shape. So we can just decrease the scale a little bit on the Y axis. So we're going to go to object mode and press S then Y. Something like this. They look a little bit better. And to add a little bit of a difference so that these two are not so similar, this and this one, I will actually select this face, and we're going to kind of go back to where we were at the beginning without extruding this face. So in order to do this, we could press Ctrl Z a lot of times, but we would lose all that we have created here. And I just want to go back on this part. So I'm going to select this face and this face, these two, and I'm going to press Ctrl plus to extend the selection, and I will press it once more like this. And you can see that we have selected all of this extrusion here, and I can now delete these faces, but first I will deselect these two edges here, like that, and I actually will delete this selection here of the edges of the bottom, like this. And now I can just press X and delete the edges, and we have this. So now if I go to vertex mode, I will select these four here, press F, and this 4 and press F. Now we were back at the beginning. Now it's quite convenient. And I'm going to press Ctrl R here, and I'm going to create two loops, and I will leave them here on the center. Maybe I will move them a little bit closer. So I will select both of them and scale them on the Y axis, so S then Y, to make them a little bit smaller. And I will select these two and extrude them. So I will go to the side and I will extrude them exactly the same level as this one. To do this, we can use snapping. So if we press E, then Z, it's a little bit hard to make it exactly as high as this. We can go very close. And now if we press G, then Z, we can move it kind of to match this. But we can use snapping. So if we click this, and we will snap it on this edge. We will use this edge from this face here to determine the height of this one. So I will select edge here. And if I press G now, and then Z, and then place the mouse here, you can see that we have the exact same height here, which is very convenient. And then these two faces I will bevel. So Ctrl B and bevel. And for the bevel, we cannot really snap. So we can do something like this. And then we could just go to edge mode and press G, then Z, and match this one here. So now we have something like this. I like how it looks, and I think that this is looking quite good. I'm going to add just one last detail here that it's quite nice at the end, is that I will go to this side here, and I will select, let's say this one. Maybe I will move this a little bit lower, so GG, double tap G, and placing it somewhere like this. And I will select these two edges. I will press Ctrl V, something like this, and I will extrude them outwards, just a very little. But first I will disable the snapping, and I will extrude outwards a little bit, so E, and something like this. If they are acting weird, you can just Alt E and extrude along normals. This will fix it. So just something very slight, something like this. And that's maybe even too much. So Alt E like this. And if we have done this, we will delete those faces. So clicking, shift clicking all of these 4 faces, 3 and 4. So X, delete faces like this. And now I'm happy with the look of this. So it's time to add the modifiers and start replicating the shape of the wheel. So this is very simple. We are here in object mode, which is where we have to be. We're going to minimize this mirror for now, and I'm going to add another modifier which is called array, like this. And you can see that it copies this same object on the side, kind of like a mirror again, but see that it's placing it here on the X axis next to it, and this is not what we want. We want to place it after this, so it has to be positioned on the Y axis. So we're going to type 0 on the X, and we're going to type 1 on the Y, and it will not be exactly 1, but this is the separation between these origin points of the object. So I'm going to go to the side view by pressing number 3, and we have to reduce this factor of Y. Maybe for you it's different, it will not be the exact same number, but we want to adjust it so that they match perfectly, so that they touch one to the other, but very slightly. So I'm going to show you how to do it. You hold down Shift to make it slow, and you kind of drag it down or up until they are very close. Something like this. Now you can see a little bit, if you increase the count, how the wheel will look. And this will be kind of the pattern of the wheel, which is quite nice. But for now we will keep it at 2, because what we want to do, and it's very important, is to make sure that these are as close as it's humanly possible. So I'm going to just separate them a little bit now, and I'm going to go very close here, very close to this edge, like this. I zoomed in a lot, and now I'm going to start moving this again. And when you see that it starts to get close, like this, what you're going to do is that you're going to press Shift Z so that you go to wireframe, or you can press up here to go to wireframe. It's Shift Z, not Ctrl Z. Don't get confused with these two, because otherwise you will go back. And what we are doing is that we're moving this edge here towards here. You can see we want to move this here until they are one on top of the other. Okay, they will never be exactly one on top of the other, but we want them to be as close as possible. So we will start moving this a little bit, decreasing it. And as you can see, for me, 0.85 places these two edges very close to one another, but it's not close enough. I want them to be much closer. So now if I drag here while holding down Shift, it's not going to work anymore because the step of the movement is too big. So I will have to start writing and adding more decimals. So 8.5, and I will try typing number 3 here, 0.853, it's not enough, so I will actually need to drop it 0.848, something like this. And this, you can see that it has placed this edge that was before on the right side. Now it's even too far away, so I need to place it a little bit further back, so 849. You can see now they are very close. So when you are something like this, what I want you to do is that you need to get even closer. So let's zoom in and moving. And if you zoom in a lot, you will see that the edges start to be far away again. And now I will move this a little bit more. So 8492, for instance. This is too far, so 8489. So this is starting to look very close. 0.8489, and I will try putting 4. And as you can see now, this is very close. And this is what I usually do. I go up to 5 decimals of trying to be as close as possible. And you can go another one, but this is right now extremely close. I will go back and zoom away and just press Shift Z. And like this, if we increase the count, we can make sure that they are super close to one another. And this is very convenient. What we will do now is that we will increase it quite a bit. And as you can see, this will be the pattern of the wheel. You can always still go back here and change. So if you go to edit mode, you could just select certain things like this. Let's go to vertex, and I could just press G, then Y. If you want this to be smaller, like that. Of course, then we would need to go back and adjust the factor. But if we just go here and scale it down on the Y-axis, for instance, the factor will remain the same. So you can kind of achieve a shape that you like. So as and Y, I will kind of want to make it a little bit more square, the shapes. Something like this. I think it looks good. I'm going to verify that this is still very close, and it is. Okay, so something like that. And now what we want to do is that we want to actually bend this so that it kind of goes around in a circle. So to do this, we need to add another modifier, which is called simple deform. Simple deform. And as you can see, this looks super weird now because it doesn't have the right settings. So we want to go to bend, because we want to bend this array in a circle. And this will not look good still, and it doesn't matter if you change the angle. This is not what we want to do. What we want to do is that we want to add an object here so that it has an origin for the bend that will determine how to bend this array. So we have to go to Shift A, and making sure that we are in object mode, we will add an empty plane axis. And now when you select this origin, you can click here and select the empty. And now when we rotate the empty along the x-axis, because we want this array here to be rotated along the x-axis so that it will kind of go in a circle, you will see that if we enable the deform, you can disable it here. It's quite useful sometimes to see what's going on. But now if you select the axis here like this and you rotate it along the x-axis, you can see what's going on. We start to kind of get the shape of the wheel. In fact, what you want to rotate it is minus 90 degrees. So minus 90, like this. And you can see that what we have. This is starting to look quite good. But here is when we need to actually open again the array. Also, we need to turn on merge here. Very important, this option. We will increase the count a little bit, and we will increase the angle to 360, or you can just drag. But you will see what we achieve with this. See that now at 360, first it doesn't actually connect. Okay, this is completely fine, and it was expected to happen. So don't worry if it doesn't connect, we will fix this now. But with the count, you can actually decide a little bit how big you want the wheel to be. So if you increase the count, you can see what happens. Now here it's a matter of actually choosing the proportions that look good to you. If you go to match, then the wheel starts looking very out of shape, very weird and not realistic. And if you go too low, it kind of looks way too thick. It depends. If you want the wheel to be for something very robust and like a track, maybe you want the wheel to be a little bit thicker. If you want it to be a car, maybe something like this is okay. But we're going to go for an in-between. So something like this. I like how it looks. I want my wheel to be quite robust. So I will decrease it a little bit. Maybe 44. I think it's a good shape. I could see this wheel existing in real life as well. So I like how it looks now. Now we're going to fix this here. Also remember that you can still go back to edit mode. And if you want, you can just press S and scale it along the x-axis, or however you want, and you can still go back and modify certain things. So if you want, you can just, for instance, select this and extrude them inside. And if you want to place like something like this, maybe it's quite nice. I will just maybe extrude it down a little bit, maybe even this one, extrude inside. It looks good. I think it looks quite good as well. Is that an extra detail? But now what I will do maybe is that I will go to top view and I will scale it down on the y-axis, so SY a little bit, and I will move this edge GG a little bit closer here, and maybe this edge as well here that's kind of falling behind GG, and I will place it here. This kind of adds like an interesting bevel. We could select also these edges here on the top like this and add the bevel, but for now I will leave it like this. So now we will fix this gap here. So we're going to press number 3 to go to the side view, and we want to connect this. So what we have to do here is exactly the same as we did with the factor. So I will minimize the array here, and now we have to increase the angle a little bit more. So in order to do this, if you drag, you will see that you cannot go higher than 360, but you can type higher. So let's go 361. You will see that they get closer. So we're going to zoom in a lot, something like this for now. And I'm going to go Shift Z, and we want these two edges to be close. If you don't see properly enough, you can just select the object and press Shift Z, so they will become orange at least, and you can see them. So 361.5. Now that's a little bit even too much. So if I go .4, it's not enough. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, so it will be probably 45. Yeah, a little bit more, 45 and another 5. Exactly. Now they are very close, but just if you think that they are very close, go and zoom in a lot, and you will see that they are quite far. And I like to put again maybe another decimal here. So 355, let's try 3 or 4, it's not enough, maybe 7, it's not enough, maybe 4, 5, 5 and 8. You can see that they get rounded, the numbers, so sometimes you need to delete. So 4, 5, 5 and 9. Yeah, I think this is close enough. So now if we zoom out and press Shift Z, you will see that this is how it looks. But we need to make one final adjustment here, because even though these vertices are very close, they are still not connected, and we want to connect them so that the tire is a continuous object and it doesn't have any gap or discontinuity here, because even though they are very close, they are not connected. So we want to connect this, and this will of course save us a lot of issues with the shading and the materials. So what we have to do here is that once we are happy, let's make a check. I'm happy how it looks. Maybe I want to change one last thing, is that I don't like this thing on the center, this gap on the center. I think it's a little bit too thick in comparison with this on the side that are a little bit smaller. In fact, they are not really symmetric here. This gap here is smaller than this one here, and this one here is the largest one in the middle. We can adjust this a little bit quickly, but the one I'm more concerned is the one here on the center. So to change this, I'm going to go to top view, and I'm going to actually hide the simple deform and the array. So now it's much easier to work with. We can see that we have this empty object that's kind of here showing, and maybe these lines are getting you confused and you are thinking that these are edges. Just, you can hide it now. You can press the letter H or hide this, but we're going to rename it first. and we're going to name it bend origin, maybe like this, so that we know. And I'm going to actually add empty like this, so that we know it's an empty object and it's for the bend origin of this modifier. And I'm going to change the name of a plane to tire. Okay, what we want to do now is, as I said, we want to make this a little bit closer. So what I want to do is I want to select all of these edges here. So all of these, and move it towards here. So this is very simple. If we go to top view like this, and we can press Shift Z and switch to vertex select, and I'm going to box select all of this. If you don't have box select enabled, you can go here to this tool and press the W, and it will change till you have the box select here like this. And I'm going to press G, then X, Shift Z. Now you can see that the gap is a little bit smaller, and you can change other stuff if you want. Maybe if you want this to be different, Shift Z, we will move this slightly, G then X, but not too much. Something like this looks good. Maybe we can even remove this line here. So if we hold down and click Ctrl X, we can get rid of it. And maybe now we can press like this, Shift Z, and move all of these on the X-axis. But I will not really do it because we lose a little bit of resolution here and it looks a little bit worse. Maybe we could do something with these two edges. So maybe we select these two and we press letter I to inset. Maybe we can extrude something, but this is up to you. I will leave it like this and I will enable these two again. You can see now it's better. There's not big gap anymore here, which is good. And we have this good looking tire. That's very nice. So now there's a very important step to do, which is to apply these modifiers. But what we're going to do is that we will enable again this empty object. So you can see it's here. It's a little bit hard to see because it's very small. You can always scale it up if you want. So you press S. You can actually now see it a little bit better. What we want to do is that I will select both of these. So both of these selected, very important. And I will just make a backup. I will just press Shift D and move it along the X-axis like this. And with these two selected, they are copies here. You can see 001, tire 001. I will press the letter M and I will click here, new collection, and I will name it tire backup, just in case we need to fix something later, because remember that when we apply the modifiers here, there's no way back. And when we apply the modifiers, it's called destructive editing, which means that we will apply everything and we will not have any more the control of disabling this, and we will not be able to go back to this individual piece. So even though it's necessary, we still want to keep this kind of as a backup. If we mess up something, we can always go back and use this again and duplicate this. And this is a very nice thing to have. But what we will do is that I will just hide it because we will likely not need it, but just in case. Because as I said, if you go to this and to apply them, you go to the object mode with the tire selected and you go from the first on the top to the bottom. So you put your mouse on top of the mirror and you press Ctrl A, then Ctrl A for the array and Ctrl A for the simple deform. Nothing has changed, but check what happens when you go to edit mode. You have all the vertices, everything here. So now this is a very high poly object. There's a lot of things going on. And now it's much harder to change anything here on the wheel. If we wanted to change the separation between these two, then we would have a problem because we need to just try to select everything here like this loop going around the wheel. So that's why you need to be happy with what you do before applying the modifiers. So when we are here, actually the mirror, we don't really need to apply. So we can apply the array directly, but making sure that we have merge on like this. And then the simple deform, Ctrl A, apply. Now there's something very important here. I didn't apply the mirror because we can add the rims of the wheel by also keeping the mirror on. So whatever we do on one side of the wheel will happen on the other side. So if I just click 2 in edge mode and select this, if I press the letter F to fill, you can see that now we have the tire kind of completed, and it will copy on the other side as well, which is very nice. But I will press Ctrl Z. Once we have this, there's something very important that we have to do, which is the fact that we still didn't connect the gap here, that was around here I think. We still didn't connect this, and this is very important to fix. Otherwise there's no way this will render properly, because we will have overlapping geometry at some point. So in order to fix this, it's very simple. We just go and select everything. So in edit mode, just go to vertex mode and press the letter A. Now what we want to do is to go to mesh, go here to cleanup and go to merge by distance. And you can see here, remove 30 vertices. You should see something similar. Otherwise it means that whenever you placed your vertices very close to each other, they were not close enough to actually merge. So that's why we wanted to place everything so close, up to 4 decimals, so that they actually get merged. However, if they didn't merge for you, you can increase this a little bit, but not too much, otherwise you will start merging all the faces. But you can see that if you increase it a little bit, it starts, you can see, decreasing and merging more and more vertices. So of course, whenever you use this tool, clean up and merge by distance, you need to make sure to have it at a very low distance. So 0.001 is the one that comes by default, which removes 30 vertices for me. And I'm pretty sure that the 30 vertices are the ones that are here. But of course, you can go select everything, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. If you apply it again, it shouldn't merge, of course, because they are merged already. But you can increase this a little bit, maybe up another decimal, go very slowly, and then it should merge. And if you want to verify that this is right, I'm going to go actually to the backup tire. I will hide this one for now, where we have the modifiers. And if I hide these two modifiers and go here, I will press slash to zoom in. If I select this profile here, like this, and now you go here and show the statistics, you can see that we have 33 vertices here, which is perfect, because this means that probably when we have applied the array here, it already merged 3 of them, and then when we did the merge by distance, it merged the remaining ones, which is perfect. So now we can turn the statistics off, and we can enable again the modifiers of this backup wheel. We can hide it and enable the wheel that we are working on. And now we have to press slash again, because we had isolated this tire. We need to go back and press slash to reveal everything. And now we have this wheel here. What we can do now is that we can hide or even delete actually this empty. This right now has no use because there's no simple deform anymore. What we can do is that first we can right click and press shade auto smooth. And as you can see, this makes it look much smoother. It looks very good. And if you see that there's a little bit of a shading, it's not wrong, it's just that doesn't look fully smooth. This might be because if you press the letter N here and you go to transform, you can see that the scale is not the same in all directions. That's because at some point, if you remember, I scaled it on the y-axis. So we can just fix this by applying the scale, and this might fix some of the shading. So if you reset this to 1 by pressing, you can press number N here to close this, and you have to press in object mode, Ctrl A, apply and scale. So you can see now, I'm not sure if you see it through the screen, but it solved the issues here with the shading. This is looking very good. And you can do something else even, which is adding a bevel modifier. So if you add a bevel, you can see that it makes it even more smooth and the shapes here look nicer. If you see that you get any shading issue, you can go to shading here and press harden normals, and you can see that now it looks much better. And you can go to geometry, and if you have any mistakes, which they might happen when you have very close edges one to another, you can change meter outer to arc, and this should even fix some of the issues. So this is looking very, very nice. And we can apply another extra modifier. But first, what we're going to do is that we're going to press Ctrl S and we're going to save this somewhere, because now we are dealing with a lot of geometry. If you press all of this and you go to statistics, you can see that we have 9,000 vertices, 8,000 edges. This is a lot of triangles, you can see. It's not so much, it could be worse. It's actually a very good number for this kind of model, but some computers might not handle this so nicely, and you don't want Blender to crash right now and lose all the progress. So Control S, and I'm going to save it somewhere. So I have this folder with a tire. I'm going to just add another tire here. Tire, since I have one that's called tire, I will just name it tire 2. And you can just press save Blender file. And now we have this tire saved, which is very nice. This would be the file that we would go to whenever we want to paste this tire in another project, which in fact I will show you very quickly how to do now. You just select this tire, Control C, you see that it's copied. Now if I go to new, I will not save. You can see that now we are in a new project, Control V, and we have the tire here. And now we are ready to just edit. You would scale this a little bit down, go to, let's say, front view, place it here, and just apply this mirror. And I would add another mirror. And I would just place here, set origin to 3D cursor. And that's it. Now we just have a car. Here you just add certain things. And from here you would model your car or whatever. And that's how it would more or less work. So I will not save this, but I will go back to the main file because we can add still another modifier, but that was to show that you can just Control C and Control V in another project. So add modifier, subdivision surface, and this is a heavy modifier, that's why I said to save, just in case. And if you increase the levels viewport to 2, even to 3 you can do. The more you put, the smoother it will look, but the harder it is on the computer. You can see how big of a difference it makes. I'm not sure if you can see it actually through the screen, depends on the quality of your video, but maybe check here. And it looks very smooth. If I disable it, you can see these lines. And if I disable the bevel, you can see it mainly on the top here in these shapes without or with the bevel. So with the bevel you can see it smoothens out a lot the vertices, and this, the subdivision, will smoothen it even more. And this tile looks so nice. Actually this is perfect, and this would be the main tire model. These modifiers I wouldn't apply any of these. Bevel and subdivision, you don't really need to apply them. This mirror, you might need to apply it in case that you want to mirror this tire in another part, as I did in the example before with the car, because right now this tire we only still control half of it, which will be very nice for making the rim. But then if you want to place another tire in the side, like copy this tire next to it, you need to apply this mirror, because you will need to actually mirror this tire with respect to another point. Remember that the mirror is happening with respect to the origin point, this orange point here, this one here. If we move this origin point, it will break everything. At least it will break the mirror. So I will change it just to show you. I will just place it here. So right click, set origin to 3D cursor. You can see that now we have splitted the wheel. So this is what we actually need to consider. If you want to actually place two wheels, one copy of the other, you need to make sure that you have applied first the mirror, like this. I will show you, Control A to apply the mirror. And now if I move this G and X, and I place the cursor, Shift S, cursor to the world origin, and then set origin to 3D cursor, like this, nothing has changed. The tire doesn't get broken because we already have applied the mirror. And now I can apply a mirror, which will affect the entire wheel, like this. But now I will just go back because we still haven't modified or created the rims, so it makes no sense to mirror it now. Okay, so we are back here with the mirror still not applied, so we only have control of half of the wheel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this bevel and this subdivision surface and even the smooth, because they really, and I can just go shade flat to be back where we were, because these two modifiers, they are very demanding, and I can even feel it on my computer. Maybe you are hearing it as well. It's just very loud because it really needs a lot of processing to make all of this smoothness. Whenever we increase this, especially the subdivision and bevel, if we were to apply those and then go back to statistics here, I will actually do it to see how much it increases. So let's try it. And I will apply the mirror as well. So check this out. Remember it was 18,000. Let's check how many it is with everything enabled. Check that now it's 1,300,000. And you can see that the wheel entirely looks full of vertices. This is so insane. So I'm going to make Ctrl Z. So this is not necessarily something bad, because for the render we want this to be very high, the triangles, the vertices to be a lot, because it makes the tire look much better. However, when we are editing like this, especially now that we want to still model the rims, it's important to actually take into consideration this. And to make it smoother and easier for us to edit, we can just disable these two. But if you only want the tire itself, you can enable these two and render this. And of course, making sure to shade auto smooth. Now I will show you how you would create the rims. So there's something to take into consideration. First, what you can do is, I will shade this flat as well. If you select this ring here and press the letter F, you can see that now we have created this flat rim. Now you could actually work it and just press letter I to inset like this. So you can see if you inset too much, these vertices start getting very close. And if you do it too much, they start overlapping and you get issues. So you can only inset to a certain part like this, and now you press G, then X. You can see there's this sort of rim. However, if you don't want this plowing with the inset, what you can do is that you just go here and extrude like this and press letter S, so E then S, and this will allow you to go much closer without getting the faces to touch. As you can see, this is much better. However, here we will not be able to actually get rid of these very close vertices one to another. They are so close. So that's why I would recommend you to create a cylinder here, because this is a perfect circle, and you could create a cylinder which would represent the rim, unless you want something simple. But if you want something more advanced, you will not really benefit from having so many vertices, because these are very close. And if I do this, this is very hard to even manipulate. And now if you were to, for instance, select this face and extrude it inwards, it's nice, but you have so much geometry here that you don't actually need. If you go here and you want to add a bevel, it's good, but you will most likely have trouble if you want to add a little bit more complex things. And the closer you get to the center, the worse it gets, because the edges start being closer to one another. Check that now. You see some artifacts, and this is not good. So what I would recommend is, if you keep it simple, you can leave it like this. But if you plan to add a relatively complex rim, which I would suggest as well that it's a good idea, especially considering that the tire itself looks very high resolution, you could also have a great rim. So what you can do here is to make actually another object, which would be the rim. So I will show you how to do it very quickly. So we go to object mode and we select this ring, and now you go to Shift S and place cursor to select it. It will place the cursor in the exact center of this wheel, so like this, and it's very convenient. And now when we add an object with Shift A in object mode, it will be placed in this cursor. So if we add cylinder, mesh, add cylinder, like this, now if we rotate it along the y-axis, in this case 90 degrees, and we scale it, something like this, you can see that now we could create the rims from this. So S and X, let's say something like this. And from here you would be able to just select this face, press I, extrude it, and just play around with it much more conveniently, because it has so many less faces. So actually, when doing this, what you should do first is to make sure that when you add the cylinder, what you want to consider is that here you have the vertices of the cylinder. So you can see that the more we increase it, the more vertices it will have. So it will look more round, which is nice. See that if we have 16 or 20, it still looks like a circle, but it's very low resolution. So this is a little bit trickier, and it will not achieve that good of results, even though it's always possible to increase the number by applying a subdivision surface. See that if we just use 16 and apply the subdivision surface, We'll have an error here, but we can add a bevel as well to kind of fix this. If we place it on top and you shade it smooth, you can see that it kind of looks a little bit more like a perfect cylinder. We can, of course, do certain adjustments here, like this. And this looks much better, but still it's not perfect. And this is because with 16 or 20 vertices, it's still very low number. So I would suggest when you add this cylinder here, I would probably go for 64 vertices, no more. Maybe you could keep it at 32, but probably 64 if you rotate it on the y-axis. And scaling it up, something like this. I would use this cylinder for only one of the rims. So what we could do actually, in fact, is select all the cylinders, so A, and then deselect this face and press X to delete faces. So now we are just left with this, that we can actually move G, then X, and place it somewhere here. And this we can now press the letter I to inset and start extruding and doing different things. Like this. Just doing something very quickly. Control V. I again. See, this could be an example of a rim. We'll show you a cool trick as well. If you go here and select these faces, you can go here to select and go to checker deselect to get something like this. Now you can press the letter I, for instance, to inset a little bit. You can just extrude it. You add these sort of things that are common in the rims. You could do the same here actually. So select, checker deselect, and you can add things like this. And now if you press slash, this would be the rim. You would need to make sure that it's kind of placed properly. Now it's not properly placed because there's a gap here, but you could fix this very easily by selecting this edge here and pressing E, then X. What we are doing here is that we are just kind of extending this so that now there's no gap here. You can see you would need to place this a little bit more inside, so G then X and something like this. What you can do is now, if you want it to be a closed object, so you can go, you could go G then X, something like this. You can press F here to fill. Now we are sure that this is a manifold object, which means that it's a closed object that is realistic, because if you keep an object like this, in theory this is called a non-manifold object because it doesn't close. And Blender needs the objects that they are fully closed sometimes, especially for lighting and rendering and shadows. So just make sure that this face is not overlapping like this. And you can just move it like this, so we have enough room to put the rim inside. And with this, what you can do is that now you can shade auto smooth to make it look a little bit better, and you can also apply the bevel. You could increase the segments as well and the subdivision surface here. So we increase the segments and the levels viewport here, we start to get a more better looking wheel. When there's this sort of issues happening, you can always use the Ctrl R here to control a little bit the loops here and the shape. So if I hide this and the bevel, I can place these loops here that will support these edges. And you can see now that it looks much better with the bevel and the subdivision surface, but always we need to take into account that there are several adjustments that have to be done. But yeah, this is a very nicely looking wheel. I just did this rim very quickly like that, but this is how I would recommend you doing it, making sure that you place the cursor here and creating another object. So now this would be up to you to design your own perfect wheel. But what I will do is that I will just reuse this rim that I have just very quickly created. Maybe I will add a bevel here, just some small details. I will extrude this inwards, something like that. One last thing is to actually mirror this rim on the other side. So in order to do this, we need to apply the mirror modifier. First, what I will do is I will remove the bevel for now, just to make it easier to work with. And I will go to top view. And what I will do is that I will actually go to edit mode and I will select this face and I will press Shift S, place the cursor to select it. And now I will go to object mode, set origin to 3D cursor in order to place this orange dot, the origin of the object, in the middle of this face. So exactly on this face. Now what I can do is I can press Alt G and this will place this object exactly in the center at x equals 0, which means that now we can create a mirror modifier, which I will put at the top. And you can see it's not mirroring across the x-axis. However, if we press the z-axis, it will mirror, and that doesn't make much sense if you think about it. And the reason because it's not copying on the x-axis is because we have rotated at the beginning when we have added the cylinder. If you remember, we have rotated it along the y-axis 90 degrees. So we need to apply the rotation first so that it gets the rotation back to its default. So you can see rotation 90 degrees on the y-axis. We don't want this. We want to tell Blender that this cylinder right now it's at its good rotation, original rotation. So we go to Ctrl A in object mode and apply rotation. And now you can see that it goes back to 0 and it respects again the axis. So we have mirrored the object. However, I forgot to actually delete this face first. So X and delete faces. We want to delete this face and enable clipping. And now we can press Ctrl A rotation. And you can see that we have perfectly mirrored this rim. So if we press slash, you can see that it's actually not placed where it should be. So now if we want to move this cylinder back in the center of the wheel, it is a little bit tricky because now let's remember what we have. We have this mirror applied here, which needs this origin point of this cylinder of the rims to be exactly on the center like it is now. So I will rename this to rims and I will drag it here on the main collection. So we really need to keep this origin here on the middle of the object. And we also have this tire here, which also has the mirror. So we want to make sure that these are aligned. And what we want to do is to bring this down. So G then Z essentially. But in order to place it perfectly on the center of the wheel, we could move it and press Shift S and move selection to cursor. And this will place it perfectly on the center. However, it's not symmetric. If you look, this is a little bit offset. If you look it from the top, the rim is not placed in the middle of the wheel because the cursor is not placed in the middle of the wheel. It's a little bit, as you can see if I move this, the cursor, we want it to be here. We want it to be on the middle of the wheel like this, but also on the center when we look it through the side. Because if we move this cursor to select it, it will move the cursor to the origin of the selected object, which now places it on the center. So now it's on the center. However, it's not on the center of the wheel when we look it from the side. So in order to do this, it's easy to fix. We can select this loop here, which is the center of the wheel when we look it from the top. This is on the center, which is perfect. And when we look it on from the side, if we move the cursor to select it, it will place the cursor on the center of this selected ring, which is in fact the center of the wheel. So now if we just go here and go selection to cursor, we have the rim perfectly placed on the center. Now if it's too thick, it's easy to fix. We can just press Shift Z and we will select all of these. So let me hide this for you to see. In edit mode, we will select all of these vertices like this. And now if we show the tire again, we can press Shift Z. This is selected. We can just press G, then X, place it somewhere here. And on the other side, since it's mirrored, it will be the same. As you can see, I like how it looks, maybe just a little bit more, like that. And you can see now we have the rims and the tire. This looks very nice. And now I will press Ctrl S. What we can do now is enable again the shade auto smooth the bevel and the subdivision surface here. You can see the rim looks very smooth, and the same here, shade, auto smooth, bevel, and subdivision. This is essentially the tile that we have created. Feel free to experiment with it and test different patterns here, especially when we are creating this profile on the beginning with the plane, and experiment with different rims, different sizes. You can add some things here on the side as well. As you can see, I really like these two lines. They add a little bit of an interesting shape. I think that real wheels also, some of them have it. And yeah, this looks very nice. Look at these grooves here. They also look very smooth, so realistic. And we can use this to actually get a render of the wheel. We can add material here and a material here, like some kind of rubber here and some kind of metal. Even though this is not the goal of the tutorial to apply the materials here, I will show you how it can look in a render with some basic materials. And make sure to share here as well your results. I would love to see your wheel and how you have followed this class with me. It would be an honor for me to see. I will give you some advice if you want. And feel free to ask anything as well. And hopefully you can even use this wheel in another project, in a car or a truck or any vehicle. And this would be even better if you can actually find a use for it. And as I said, you have this file here of Blender that whenever you create a project, you can come back here, select these two objects, Ctrl C, you go to your other project and Ctrl V, and then you can start placing it wherever you want. It's super convenient. That's why I like creating these objects that are now in separate projects. And hopefully you have learned a lot, and I will see you on the next one.